High ticket sales is one giant fucking game, right? And the chances are, if you're watching this right now, you're probably getting absolutely slapped, to be honest, right? And the truth is, just like with everything in life, there are cheat codes to this game, right? Specific tactics that the best of the best use, like the top 1% closers that they use every single day to close a bunch of deals whilst everyone else is playing mediocre, basically, right? And that is exactly why their pipelines are printing money every single month. And then there are a bunch of people in sales that are always playing the blame game, and the industry is rigged against them because they were sold the dream of high ticket sales, right? The difference is that the game they're playing is a totally different animal. Okay, so in this video, the goal here is to break down the exact cheat codes that you need to start winning the game of high ticket sales, right? So if you're closing for an offer, if you're running a sales team, or if you're an offer owner that's like scaling up, this will be the blueprint. Right? Now, before you learn how to play it, you have to understand that sales is genuinely one of the, in my opinion, the best video game that's ever created, right? Because if we actually think about it truly, every single day, there are probably billions of dollars that are moving through Zoom calls. And on the other side of that as well, lives that are being transformed, right? And I have literally coached 15, 16-year-olds that are making 10 plus K a month, so more than like, you know, a high paid salary, just because they cracked the cheat codes, obviously through my mentorship, right? Now, the wild part is that every point you score in this game is literally just dollars hitting your bank account in real fucking life, right? And it is just the cheat codes here, right? This is where most sales operations just get absolutely butchered, right? Because they think that the call starts when the prospect joins the actual Zoom call itself, right? But we will go through all of the different steps, all of the reality of this, but the deal was already won, or it was already lost long before a single word was ever spoken, right? Because essentially certainty, it is the bridge between where your prospect is right now and the transformation that they're paying you to guide them through, right? And if the closer can't essentially build that bridge, then nothing really matters, and the results that they get will be very half-baked, essentially, right? Now, to win consistently at high-ticket sales, right, you have to break the game board, let's imagine it like that, like a board, into 4 different sections. I'll keep this very simple, right? The setup, the frame, discovery, and close, okay? No crazy advanced concepts, because as soon as you try to make it more advanced, you're just making it more difficult, right? Every call is literally some combination of those 4 elements. And every combination is either literally like stacking certainty inside of the prospect's mind, or it is literally like violently killing it, right? And you should be committed to mastery, because you should be obsessing over every single section, because the average closer is kind of not really obsessing over any of them, right? And then they've got a close rate of 15% or whatever, right? So cheat code number 1 is the setup, right? And this is the one that I just see so many closers skip, and appointment setters and everything, because they just think that like the words alone are what dictates the decision. But the reality is that like the setup is doing like half the selling before you ever even open your mouth, right? So the top 1%, you should be optimizing for optimizers, like 1% optimizers constantly. They're running a clean setup with a clean backdrop, with a sharp camera, with some warm offset lighting coming from a ring light, a microphone, right? A high quality microphone, all these things, so that the prospect joins that call, and before a single word has even been uttered from their mouth, there is perceived authority, right? The prospect is unconsciously pricing this guy like higher, guy or girl, and deciding to actually listen. And then there's the version that I see countless times on interviews and things, where they've got a MacBook webcam pointed at a ceiling bulb, right, like a light bulb. Pillows are visible on the bed with cum stains on it, and the audio is coming through some like tinny microphone that's built into their laptop, right? That closer is about to speak, and he's already fucking dead in the water, because the prospect has classified them as someone that is definitely not worth the 10 grand, regardless of what they say next, right? And if you actually map this out, the math on all of this is stupid, and you have to think mathematically. You have to be the CEO of your own role, right? If you take a closer that's doing 7 calls a day, 5 days a week, at $1,000 commission per deal, right? We'll keep it nice and simple, right? At a 32% close rate, so pretty standard, that's $572,000 a year. We're not going to factor in show rate and all those things. Obviously you would if you were really trying to get granular with your numbers, but just for hypothetical sake, if you bump that close rate to 34% with a decent camera, a good microphone, that same closer will then print 624K. That is a $52,000 a year increase from like a $20 piece of like, you know, ring light. It's crazy, right? Now, if you multiply that, if you're thinking more of a sales manager, if you multiply that across, let's say, a 5-rep sales team, you are watching $250,000 bleed out of your top line annually because nobody wanted to spend $20 on a fucking ring light and a big hefty Himalayan salt lamp, right? Now, the cheat code to this in the setup goes deeper than just the gear itself. You've got the pre-call ritual as well, because you should never jump on a call cold, right? You should be running a very specific sequence every single time so we can tap into this energy sphere, right? So I've talked about some of these concepts. You should have a smelling stick, so you shock the nervous system awake and you anchor yourself to this. This is something that Jordan Belfort talks about, right? You should anchor yourself to a certain emotion by using this. You should have a vision board with tangible goals, specific prices linked to those goals, right? Like a breakdown, specific dates, right? And then I talk about this as well, and maybe we'll do an example of this at some point. I need you to pre-write the deal before it happens, right? On a physical notepad, you're going to write out the prospect's name on the left-hand side, the price point next to it, and then underneath all of that, the exact words that you know the prospect is going to say when the number drops and they lead into a close, right? So then when you actually take the real call, you're going to drop the investment amount. You're going to quickly glance down at what was written, and you're just going to watch reality unfold in front of you. This is so important. Now, there's some other pre-call priming stuff that I kind of run through. This is a really important thing, and I kind of touch on it inside of the community I'm running. But most closers really don't understand how this actually works, because the brain is a gimmick machine, and it's always scanning for certainty. When a closer walks on, it happens all the time, and naturally, even subconsciously, if you walk onto that call with doubt, the brain is subconsciously adjusting your tone, language, and basically just aligning with failure. And the prospect will feel that instantly, even though they may not be able to articulate that that's how they're feeling, right? But when the closer's already manifested the deal and has already lived that future state inside of their own head, the brain shifts everything to match that reality, and then the prospect just follows this pathway that you've already formulated, okay? Now, cheat code number 2 is frame. Now, I've yapped about this dozens of times, but if you still don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, this is essentially the first 2 minutes of every call. Now, it goes deeper than that, but that's the hyper focus, right? Because I can tell every time without fail, and it's never let me down, within the first 2 minutes whether the deal is going to close, every time, right? Because that establishes energy, positioning, frame, authority, all of these things, respect. And the person who sets the frame is the one who controls the call, and the person who controls the call is the one that makes the money, okay? Now, 90% of closers, it blows my mind, and people are teaching this shit, open the call the same way every time. They just start yapping about the same predictable bullshit. Whereabouts are you based? Oh, wow, I love it there. Or I've never been. Or what's the weather like, right? And then the closer might say some selfish bullshit story about their weekend, right? And it's like, we're 5 minutes in, nothing has happened whatsoever. Nothing has moved the needle. No trust has even been built. The prospect has already checked out. And from that point forward, any attempt to challenge or reframe is going to feel very incongruent because there was no authority or expectation that was ever established, right? But if you look at an actual high-performing closer, they run the call completely differently, right? Rapport always stays under that kind of 2-minute threshold. It's absolutely never about the weather, right? It is about something specific that you already pulled off of maybe the prospect's LinkedIn, right? Like the 5th year business anniversary, a recent milestone, something that just shows that you took a little tiny piece of intention, because the prospect will feel that immediately. And the closer can just jump straight into it, build a ton of trust very, very fast. And then we dive in and we create a generative frame, which is slightly tailored and tweaked to them. Because then when we do the agenda, we can explain how this is going to basically play into their scenario, how it's customized, how every, business owner has different needs, for example, and how we're going to do a deep dive into these situations so we can show them under the hood of the car exactly what they would need to know this is going to work for them, right? That is really like the key to all of this, right? Because if you look at it in the space, there's been the same type of lines that have been recycled for years. The second that a prospect hears it, they have just basically in their mind been like, okay, this person's entered sales mode, right? And it's really, really detrimental. And you'll even see this. I have like an objection handling, like my own objection handling, not some recycled shit that everyone stole from Bill Walsh or whatever, like my own process to it, which is very generative and very unique to me. And I know that that works, not just because it's been done through experience and battle tested, but because I have developed it, right? It's like, it is unique. Okay, and this is really like the key towards this is you need to understand these layers, right? You need to understand that like everything should be generative, but taking concepts that are proven, right? And that's really the cheat code at this layer, right? Because we should never be, you know, begging for the deal. We should be filtering whether the prospect even deserves to be sold to. And then that filter alone will raise the close rate more than like any just like standardized objection handle ever will, right? Because as soon as you stop like needing the deal, you start getting the deal, right? And these are just core, you know, framework concepts to kind of get you past level 1, right? So that's like how you would beat level 1. And I go super in depth on the kind of this inside of the transcend.info community. I'm not that guy that's going to do crazy CTAs all the time and stuff, but like I've poured a lot of time, years of experience selling on different verticals, making my own kind of processes into this, right? So if you want to be a part of it, there'll be a link and all of that good stuff. Now, as we approach level 2, that's really where you start to break past, you know, 95% of where most, you know, sales teams and operations and closers stall out, right? So at this stage, the setup is dialed in, the frame is locked in, the closer is running, you know, 7 calls a day. If you're still not closing at the rate that you would want to be, there are a couple of reasons that this is happening. The first is actually a good sign, right? Which is where the closer is in this skill building phase, right? Reps are compounding, outputs are lagging because it's a lag indicator, right? And there is a stretch of this where you have to just lean into it. The second reason though, is really where you're going to hit a ceiling, right? Because the closer is half-assing discovery, hoping some type of script will help them or some type of mental masturbation, philosophical kind of approach to this, right? And we kind of like really anchor into the wrong things, right? So like the closer asks a prospect what he wants, we hear 10 grand a month, we dig for the goal, we walk away with a surface level line about retiring the parents, right? And then essentially what happens, the pitch lands and the prospect pulls the classic, like, I need some time to think it over, right? And then we go over to our classic little script and we fire off the, well, if you had a bag of money, would you do it? Or like, have you ever heard heavy is the head that wears the crown? And then we essentially get to that point where we just get 6 months of silence. And I look at this as like the entire call being a fucking hallucination, right? Because the prospect never committed to anything because the closer never actually held them to anything, right? And we ended up spending, I don't know, 20 minutes on future state questions that felt safe and comfortable to both sides, by the way, for you as well. None of them create pressure or expose the reality of why this prospect is stuck. If there's no pressure and no exposed reality, there is no sale. And this applies for B2C as well as B2B. Now, there's different approaches to them, which maybe I'll go in depth on in a different video, but this is really the key. Like, we need to be able to highlight the reality, okay? Now, cheat code number 3 is the discovery. And this is obviously where the sale actually gets made, right? And the top 1% walk into every single call with one question burning in their mind. Like, I need this baked into your subconscious. Why doesn't this person already have the thing that they say that they want, right? Because if they had the capacity to solve it on their own, they would have already solved it. Which means somewhere in their behavior, identity, cycle, or rationalizations, there is a specific reason that they're stuck. And that reason is the thread and the crack that the closer pulls onto to unravel the entire deal, which is why the discovery, you really want it to run into pain first, responsibility, and then we can touch on goal state and things like this, but we need responsibility, accountability, why now, shifting points, all of these things, right? Because most closers only ever really touch the goal state because it is comfortable, like I said, and we need to be able to front load pain and responsibility and only really touch goal state at the end to cast identity onto the prospect and the new future reality that could be created, right? So we have to understand the level of depth. You need to be digging for oil, but when you hit oil, you gotta dig fucking deep. You gotta uncover this massive oil spill, right? Every thread that the prospect drops gets tightened into hard numbers, how often the problem has been like showing up for, how long it's been dragging on, how much money has been burned on solutions, and we understand the root cause of all of this, right? And then essentially as we get to the end of this, the discovery finishes and the prospect has been quantified into his own reality, and that reality is like violently loud, and it's louder than any objection that you could ever reach for at the end of the call, right? And that's really the cheat code, right? So get deep on the current situation, get obsessive with specifics, quantify everything, and the rationalization will eventually evaporate. And you should be like super curious and excited to learn like the depth of these sort of things, because that It allows them to come to light bulb moments and realizations that they wouldn't have come to themselves otherwise, okay? Now, if we look at the final level, that is the close itself, right? An average closer gets to the closing phase and they kind of shrink up a little bit, right? Like the energy drops and they start sounding like a little pitch robot. And again, prospects will smell this from a mile away. And that switch it just switches the call instantly, right? And the prospect will no longer trust you, okay? We never flip that switch, right? The close needs to be the same conversation that was happening 2 minutes earlier, delivered by the same human in the same tone, but the sequence that we take them through is very surgical. Okay, so we need to ensure that we are recapping every pain point that the prospect laid out, confirming that nothing got missed, right? We drop straight into the tie downs, right? We've got the whole different tie downs for this. I've touched on this before. You know, would it be out of this world to get us started today if everything looks right, etc. We start lining the pitch up. And then when the prospect says that it wouldn't be out of this world, that is a positive no, which is very easy for them to say, by the way. It's much easier to get someone to say a positive no than a hard yes. And then the pitch that follows is landing basically into an already decided territory, right? And you also have the yes, no, maybe frame that you can hit and things as well, which allows us to skip the whole kind of polite no, right? We need to ensure that there is nothing for them to fall through because people love to look for escape releases, right? They love to basically get out from things, right? So here we're starting the pitch in a way where they're already pre-closed and the sale is basically over before we actually even go through the phases themselves, right? And you need to ensure that the pitch itself is engineered to pre-handle every objection before it can surface. Each one is going to get tied back to the exact pain the prospect exposed in discovery. We're going to be handling time, we're going to be handling price through value, we're going to be anchoring it, all of these different things so that we can actually ensure necessity within this as well. We also want to future pace problems that they don't even realize are going to come up as they progress through this journey. Right? That is a crazy cheat code to writing a pitch because they're just viewing it from the yard mark or whatever that saying is, the meter mark, right? But we should be looking out beyond, right? Because there are all these additional challenges that they will face if they try and do this alone, right? And naming that problem, the next problem that they're going to face, this allows us to really show that we're the experts and really create a lot more commitment and the necessity of working with someone through this, right? And when an objection does actually slip through, the move for this is to never ever reach for like some random script, right? The bag of money line, the cost of inaction line, all of those things, because every prospect with a functioning brain has heard those like hundreds of times. The only reframe that actually lands is the discovery the prospect already handed over to us and all of the juice that is sitting there waiting to be used where we can reverse and mirror that back onto them, right? Some type of script should never really be entering the conversation. It should be contextual concepts that we do inside of objection handling, utilizing all of the threads that they gave us as well, okay? And all of these things I will go more and more advanced into, but hopefully this makes some sense. I think one of the videos that I will do for sure will be an advanced objection handling framework. So if you want to see that, definitely let me know. But that is the 4 sections that allows you to actually close at the highest level. And it is the reason that most closers are not killing it in this space, right? Because everything else in the equation, right? The script, the offer, the leads, all these things is usually fine. And a weak closer with like a perfect script will lose to a strong closer that is not even following a script and just, you know, is almost just like winging it within reason, but they have this high level of agency and certainty. Right? Because the prospect will feel the closer through the screen, and what they're actually feeling is whether the work got done before the call and whether the closer basically believes that like the commission's already in their pocket, right? And this is where obsession becomes the baseline, right? Every morning starts with a cold shower, right? So that discomfort is a chosen reframe before the first call of the day, right? You should be optimizing your sleep, all of these things that we talk about, right? Optimizing your sleep like a professional athlete, right? Because you shouldn't be getting brain fog in the middle of the afternoon when you're going through your calls, right? That's just a silent killer. The body, right? Running that shit on 1 meal a day so you're not just digesting halfway through a sales call and feeling all bloated and fucked up, right? Short form content should be locked away on your phone, right? Because the way I look at it, every single scroll is another installment of the old version of themselves, right? The low frequency people, right? The friends who laugh at anyone that are working the weekends. You got to cut out all these people. The environments that are pulling you back into an old identity. Most people are not going to root for you to win and for you to transform because it exposes everyone else's stagnation. So the cut, the awareness, the becoming undeniable, that will be the thing that actually allows you to close at the highest level. And that is ultimately what we need to be striving towards. So with that being said, those are the core concepts of how you can close at the highest level and become someone undeniable that is selling through congruency, conviction, and generative language. Again, all of these concepts get massively expanded on inside the community, but I always want to also make sure that I am delivering this type of stuff on the YouTube and giving it away for free as well, because my goal is just to decimate every other sales coach in the space. So I will be going deep into all of these concepts. Objection handling, I think, is something that's very overslept on as well, like how to actually do objection handling in a calibrated way that ensures that you close at the highest level through genuine authenticity, because that's always the thing that's missing. And I ran a coaching call yesterday where I said, like, do a 1 if you have a very strong objection handling process that you know works, and do a 2 if you don't. I think there was one person that put 1. The other like 60 people on that call all put 2. How concerning is that we don't have a go-to? And that's the things that you have to be questioning when you're learning from other sales coaches, is like, have they given you something that is actually repeatable, the concept, not like you just read some words, but a repeatable process that is unique to you, slightly tailored to your offer, and is generative so that you don't just get lumped in with every other schmuck closer in the industry. Okay, so we will keep expanding on all of these concepts. I hope that this video was useful. If you have any requests or anything that you would want me to do a deep dive into, feel free to let me know down below. Other than that, peace and love. I will catch you very soon.